Hello Midnights. We hope you enjoy our stories. Next one, Beneath Omaha, Surviving the Mutation. Let us know where you are listening from and don't forget to subscribe. The fluorescent lights, usually a monotonous hum that lulled me into a stupor by 5 p.m. Today, June 6, 2025, were a high-pitched, soul-shredding whine that grated against the growing dread in my gut. I'm Alex, a marketing drone whose biggest daily challenge used to be hitting quarterly targets, and I was trapped in the bland, soul-crushing cubicle farm of Synergy Solutions in Omaha, Nebraska. This place had morphed into a tomb, its walls closing in with every passing second. Outside, the sky above Nebraska was an unnatural bruise of malevolent purple and bruised gray, a grim reflection of the chaos erupting below. It had started subtly, a strange news report filtering in around lunchtime about a highly aggressive flu strain in a small, rural town near the Missouri River. We'd laughed, made morbid jokes about calling in sick. But by 3 p.m., the laughter died, choked by a rising tide of primal panic. Our usually unflappable boss, Mr. Henderson, a man whose tailored suits seemed to absorb all emotion, was pacing, his face ashen and drawn, a terrified stranger in familiar clothes, his composure shattered like fragile glass. Then they began. Not the everyday frustrations of office life, but primal, guttural screams that ripped through the thin walls of our building, shaking the very foundations of our mundane existence, a sound that tore at the fabric of sanity itself, raw and desperate. The outbreak, as we now desperately understood it, wasn't a flu at all. It was a bioweapon, a viral strain ominously dubbed Project Chimera, born from the twisted, hubristic ambition of a rogue division of Omnicorp, a pharmaceutical giant that had played God and unleashed damnation. Their highly secretive underground lab in a remote region of the Ozarks was the birthplace of this nightmare, a crucible of unholy creation. Their aim was to create a super soldier serum, a virus designed to enhance physical capabilities and suppress pain. Instead, they unleashed an unimaginable horror, a living, breathing plague. The virus, a parasitic RNA strand, hijacked the host's central nervous system, reanimating necrotic tissue and severing higher brain functions, replacing them with a singular, overriding directive: consume. Its incubation period was terrifyingly short, mere minutes from exposure to full transformation, and its transmissibility was brutally efficient. Bodily fluids, particularly blood and saliva, were enough. Dr. R.S. Thorne, a disgruntled and morally conflicted lead scientist, had attempted to sabotage the project, introducing a genetic anomaly, a desperate failsafe he hoped would neutralize the virus. His efforts were too late, a futile whisper against a roaring inferno. A catastrophic containment breach occurred during a routine transport of infected samples to a testing facility. The virus, instead of enhancing, twisted its hosts into something monstrous, something driven by an insatiable, consuming hunger that devoured their very souls. The sheer speed of its spread and the gruesome nature of its effects painted a chilling picture of an apocalypse unfolding in real time, a global collapse that would leave no corner untouched, a swift and merciless end to civilization. Our office, once a beacon of mundane productivity, had transformed into a desperate, fragile fortress, a last, trembling bastion against the encroaching darkness. We were a motley crew, thrown together by circumstance and the looming specter of oblivion. There was Sarah, the quiet, unassuming HR rep, whose usually neat blonde bob was now disheveled, her blue eyes wide with terror but holding a surprising, steely glint of unwavering determination. For Sarah, the outbreak was a terrifying personal affront. A meticulous planner, she struggled to comprehend a world where order had so violently unraveled. She initially clung to the hope of official rescue, checking her phone religiously for any sign of a centralized response, even as the networks died, her fingers raw from futile attempts. Then there was Mark, the burly IT guy, his usual sarcastic smirk replaced by grim resolve, clutching a fire extinguisher like a makeshift warhammer, a crude weapon against an unthinkable enemy. Mark, a cynical pragmatist, was the first to dismiss the flu narrative. He saw the panicked faces, the unhinged screams, and intuitively grasped the biological horror unfolding, viewing it with a chilling, detached analysis of a system gone irrevocably wrong. He understood, faster than most, that this wasn't an illness, it was a total breakdown, a primal scramble for survival. And then there was old Mr. Davis, the accountant, whose tremors from Parkinson's disease were now exacerbated by sheer terror, yet who still offered surprisingly lucid advice from his years as a Vietnam veteran, a quiet strength hidden beneath his fragile exterior, a ghost of a warrior in a dying world. Mr. Davis's understanding transcended the immediate chaos. He recognized the signs of societal collapse, the primal fear, the sudden reversion to instinct. He saw it not as a virus, but his war, and his quiet wisdom came from having walked that path before, the distant echoes of explosions replaced by the closer sounds of tearing flesh. The first zombies we saw were through the reinforced glass of the lobby doors, their shapes distorted, nightmarish caricatures of humanity. They were once people, now grotesque parodies of humanity, their very existence an affront to life. Their skin was a mottled gray-green, taut over gaunt frames, with patches of torn flesh revealing blackened muscle beneath. Their eyes, once holding the light of humanity, were now milky white orbs, devoid of pupils, fixed with an unholy hunger that chilled me to the bone, a gaze that promised only annihilation. Their movements were jerky, shambling, but with an unsettling, relentless drive, an unstoppable tide of death. Some had pieces of clothing still clinging to them, tattered remnants of their former lives, a smeared tie, a torn blouse, that only served to highlight their horrific transformation, a macabre testament to what was lost. Their mouths were stretched in a perpetual rictus, revealing jagged, bloodied teeth, designed for tearing, for feasting. The stench, even through the thick glass, was nauseating, a sickening mix of decay, stale blood, and something acrid, almost chemical, that burned in the back of my throat, threatening to make me retch, a smell of pure dread that settled deep in my bones. The initial attempts at communication had failed utterly. Cell networks were dead, the internet a ghostly silence, a void where information once flowed freely. The government's response, or rather, the criminal negligence thereof, was as terrifying as the infected themselves. Early broadcasts from Lincoln had been full of dismissive assurances, downplaying the flu as a seasonal inconvenience, their voices echoing with a chilling detachment that would forever haunt our collective memory. Then came the garbled, contradictory official statements, each one dissolving into static faster than the last, until all that remained was the agonizing silence of abandonment. There were fleeting, horrifying images on Mark's makeshift radio of military checkpoints, swiftly overrun, of iconic Midwestern cities engulfed in smoke and fire, of desperate calls for evacuation that went unanswered, swallowed by the rising tide of the dead. It became chillingly clear, there was no plan, no rescue, no authority left to turn to. We were completely on our own, adrift in a sea of unknown horrors, abandoned by the very institutions sworn to protect us, left to the wolves by those who promised salvation. The chilling words containment failure and total loss became the terrifying soundtrack to our despair, echoing the demise of the world we once knew, a dirge for humanity that played on repeat in the hollow chambers of our fear-addled minds. Our first real confrontation came when a small group of infected managed to smash through a lower-level window, their guttural moans echoing ominously through the building, a chorus of encroaching doom. The office, usually an open-plan nightmare, suddenly offered a perverse advantage. The cubicle walls, though flimsy, provided temporary barriers, creating a maze of potential death traps, every turn a gamble with oblivion. The air inside became thick with the metallic tang of fear and the cloying smell of sweat. We moved like ghosts through the maze of cubicles, every shadow a lurking threat. The first shambler to breach was a former colleague, Brenda from accounting, her once meticulous blazer now shredded, her jaw unnaturally slack. Her milky eyes locked onto Sarah, who let out a choked cry, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Mark, with surprising agility, swung his fire extinguisher, connecting with a sickening thud against Brenda's skull. The creature crumpled to the floor, its limbs twitching, but more were coming, their numbers a terrifying, relentless tide, an unstoppable wave of horror. A hulking figure, Mr. Jenkins from legal, lunged at me, his rotting fingers reaching, the stench of his decay washing over me. I recoiled, fumbling for something, anything. My hand closed around a heavy, antique paperweight, a bronze bull. With a desperate grunt, I swung it, feeling the satisfying crunch as it connected with his temple. He stumbled back, a broken gurgle escaping his ruined throat, giving me a precious moment to scramble away. Mr. Davis, surprisingly, pulled a small, intricately engraved pocketknife from his wallet, a family heirloom, and with a burst of unexpected strength, jabbed it into the leg of another, buying us precious, fleeting seconds of borrowed time. His face, usually placid, was a mask of grim determination. He was a man rekindled, a soldier reawakened, the echoes of past battles now a visceral reality. Despair was a heavy cloak, threatening to smother us all, to extinguish the last embers of hope, to drag us into the abyss. We were critically low on food, subsisting on stale coffee and what remained of the vending machine snacks, the taste of survival bitter and metallic in our mouths, a grim testament to our dwindling resources. The water coolers ran dry after a single agonizing day, our thirst a constant, burning reminder of our precarious existence, a gnawing torment. The constant guttural moans from outside, punctuated by the occasional shattering glass or distant gunshot, wore relentlessly on our sanity, chipping away at our resolve, eroding our very souls. Sleep was a luxury none of us could afford, every creak and groan of the old building sending jolts of adrenaline through our exhausted bodies, every shadow a potential monster waiting to claim us. Then, one night, the terror reached its absolute peak. A larger horde, drawn by some unknown sound or scent, began battering relentlessly at the main entrance, a primal drumbeat of insatiable hunger. The reinforced glass groaned under the unholy assault, threatening to give way at any moment, the very air vibrating with their relentless hunger, a palpable force of pure malice. Sarah, who had been surprisingly resourceful in finding supplies, discovered an old emergency exit plan, a faded blueprint of hope. It led to the building's maintenance tunnels, a dark and oppressive labyrinth of pipes and wires. It was a risky gamble, a terrifying plunge into the unknown, a descent into the very bowels of the building, where light feared to tread. But staying put was a guaranteed death sentence, a slow, suffocating demise, a protracted agonizing end. As we prepared to descend into the murky depths of the tunnels, the main doors finally gave way with a deafening, splintering crash that echoed like the death knell of our world. The roar of the horde was an ear-splitting, terrifying chorus of hungry death, a sound that ripped through the office and vibrated in my bones, chilling me to the core. I clutched a heavy stapler, its cold metal digging into my palm, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird desperately trying to escape its cage of ribs. This was it. There was no escape, only a desperate scramble for another minute, another breath. The scent of decay flooded the office, overwhelming my senses, and the sight of those vacant, hungry eyes was burned irrevocably into my memory, a haunting tableau of doom. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a battle against the very essence of hope, against the crushing weight of knowing that the world we knew was gone, replaced by a monstrous, insatiable hunger. The virus hadn't just created zombies, it had created a living hell, and we were trapped in its fiery depths, fighting for every agonizing second of existence, bleeding for every breath, our lives measured in the shallow gasps between horrors. Go. Go, 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 Mark bellowed at 6:15 p.m., June 6, 2025, his voice raw with exertion as he swung the fire extinguisher in a desperate arc, deflecting a shambler's lunge. Sarah, with a surprising burst of strength born of pure terror, heaved open the heavy, rusted maintenance tunnel door, revealing a gaping maw of absolute darkness. The air that rushed out was thick with the smell of damp earth, stagnant water, and something else, a metallic tang that pricked my nostrils, hinting at buried horrors, forgotten terrors. Mr. Davis, surprisingly agile for his age, was the first to slip through, his small pocket knife glinting in the dim light. I followed, then Sarah, Mark acting as our brutal rearguard, his grunts of effort punctuated by sickening thuds. The last glimpse I had of the office was a sea of grasping hands and those milky white eyes, their unholy hunger focused entirely on us, a nightmare made flesh. The heavy clang of the emergency door slamming shut behind us was a temporary reprieve, a fragile seal against the nightmare we'd just escaped. The echoing thumps from the other side, however, were a chilling reminder that the nightmare was far from over. The maintenance tunnels were a claustrophobic nightmare as we descended deeper, each step a descent into an unholy abyss. At 7:30 p.m., June 6, 2025, pipes, thick as tree trunks, crisscrossed the ceiling, dripping condensation onto the concrete floor that glistened ominously. The air grew colder with every step, and the darkness was absolute, save for the weak beams of our hastily discovered office flashlights. Sarah, with her HR organizational skills, had proven surprisingly adept at navigating the chaotic schematics of the building's infrastructure, now our lifeline. Left here. No, wait. This pipe leads to the old boiler room. Too many dead ends. Her voice, usually composed, now trembled, but her focus was unwavering. We moved in a desperate, shuffling procession, the only sounds our ragged breaths, the drip of water, and the distant, muffled moans of the infected above. It was in one of these dark, winding passages that we stumbled upon it, a severed power cable, sparking erratically, illuminating a grotesque scene, a tableau of pure horror. A worker, half-eaten, his body contorted, was pinned against a concrete wall, a single, decaying hand still grasping a wrench. The sight was a brutal reminder of the raw, undiluted savagery that now owned the world, a chilling premonition of our own fate. At 9 p.m., June 6, 2025, Mark's jury-rigged radio, a miraculous contraption of scavenged wires and a stapler casing, crackled to life, pulling us from the suffocating silence. It was a fragmented broadcast, a female voice, desperate and breathless. Any survivors? Military perimeter. Collapsing. Repeat, collapsing. Seek high ground. Secure locations. Avoid population centers. Virus mutating. The signal faded, replaced by agonizing static and what sounded like distant explosions, the final, desperate cries of a dying world. My blood ran cold. Mutating. The word hung in the stale air of the tunnels, a new layer of dread. Mr. Davis, leaning against a cold pipe, his eyes closed, murmured, "They're not just shamblers anymore. Vietnam taught me, fear what you don't understand, and fear what changes." His words were a chilling prophecy, echoing the deeper, insidious horror unfolding around us. The thought of this virus adapting, evolving, twisting the knot of fear in my stomach into something sharper, more insidious, a venomous thought that promised no end to our torment. We were deep within the network, beneath the city itself, when the sound started at 11:45 p.m., June 6, 2025. Not the distant moans of the infected, but a new, more terrifying noise, a skittering, scratching sound, like something large and agile moving through the ventilation shafts above us, something inhumanly fast. It was too fast, too deliberate to be a rat. A cold realization dawned on me. Had some of the infected adapted to the tunnels? Was the virus truly mutating, creating something faster? We froze, our flashlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating nothing but dust motes dancing in the beams. The scratching grew louder, directly above us, a horrifying counterpoint to the distant screams from the world we'd left behind. Sarah gasped, pointing a trembling finger. A shadowed shape flickered across a grimy vent cover. It was only for an instant, a flash of speed, but it left an indelible image of something lean, too fast, and utterly unnatural, a new, more terrifying predator. We were not alone in this dark labyrinth. The hunters are here. Hours later, exhausted and on edge, we huddled in a small, relatively dry alcove. The scuttling sounds had subsided, but the memory of that fleeting shadow remained. At 2 a.m., June 7, 2025, Mark, ever the pragmatist, was consulting a tattered utility map Sarah had found, tracing lines with a grimy finger. "Okay, so if we can reach the old subway access point, 5 blocks west, there might be a chance. These tunnels connect to the disused lines. They're heavily reinforced, probably still sealed from the surface." Hope, a fragile, forgotten emotion, flickered. Mr. Davis, his eyes surprisingly sharp, added, "The old storm drains run parallel. Might be a way to move unseen, if we can find a large enough conduit." A plan, however desperate, began to form. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble against overwhelming odds, but it was something. The silence that followed was not of despair, but of grim, shared resolve. We were not just surviving, we were fighting back, inch by agonizing inch, into a world that had forgotten what it meant to be human. The journey ahead was a plunge into deeper unknowns, but the alternative was a chilling certainty, becoming another silent echo in the endless, hungry hum of Project Chimera. The biggest emotional burden Alex and the group are carrying as they navigate the tunnels is the crushing, suffocating weight of lost hope, a phantom limb of what they once were, and the constant, gnawing fear of the unknown, a relentless dread that clings to their very souls. They've witnessed the collapse of their world, the transformation of humanity into monsters, and now they're realizing the very virus itself is evolving, making their escape even more precarious, a grim, twisting mockery of their efforts. Every rustle, every distant sound, every fleeting shadow becomes a potential harbinger of a new, more terrifying form of death, eroding their sanity with each passing moment. The air itself tastes of despair, and every breath is a silent scream against the encroaching darkness. Humanity, in its relentless pursuit of progress, played God. We sought to conquer nature, to unlock its deepest secrets, to bend life itself to our will. Project Chimera was born from that very hubris, a desire to create a super soldier, to enhance, to control. But life, in its infinite complexity and brutal indifference, cannot be controlled. It adapts, it evolves, it finds a way. And when our grand designs falter, when our containment breaks, the very tools we forge for power become the instruments of our destruction. The horror above isn't just a virus, it's a consequence. It's the tangible manifestation of unchecked ambition, of science divorced from morality, of a society so consumed by its own advancements that it forgot the fundamental fragility of existence. We built our towers, we spun our networks, we declared ourselves masters of the planet. Yet, with a single, mutated strand of RNA, that entire edifice crumbled, revealing the thin, gossamer thread upon which our civilization truly hung. This plague isn't just consuming flesh, it's devouring our past, our future, our very identity. It's a mirror, reflecting our capacity for both unimaginable creation and catastrophic self-destruction. The screams from the surface aren't just the cries of the dying, they are the lament of a species that, in its arrogance, unleashed a force it could never comprehend, much less contain. So, let this be the warning. Let the silence of our desolate cities, the gnawing hunger of the mutated, and the desperate scramble of the few who remain echo through whatever future may exist. Beware the God complex. Beware the quiet hum of progress that drowns out the whispers of caution. For when humanity dares to play God, the consequences are invariably hellish, and the damnation we unleash will consume not just our bodies, but the very soul of the world. And the question that remains, echoing in the suffocating darkness of these tunnels, is not if we survive, but what kind of monsters will we become in the fight to simply exist.